Well, hello, and welcome again to this Lent series where we have been exploring issues under the title Transforming the Nation. Now, I understand that's a big title, but it's based on John Wesley's description of the purpose of Methodism. At the first Methodist conference of his preachers in 1744, the question was posed, what may we reasonably believe to be God's design in raising up the preachers called Methodists? And the answer is illuminating. It is to reform the nation, more particularly the church, and to spread scriptural holiness over the land. Now, as I've said before, we often have the last part of that phrase quoted to us, but not the whole of it. And so we wanted in this Lent to look at how we might transform the nation under different headings. So we've looked at politics, we've looked at law and justice, we've looked at the arts, we've looked at social interaction, we've looked at evangelism and mission. And tonight, we're considering education. And we're delighted to have with us the head of Kingswood School, Andrew Gordon Brown. And I wonder, Andrew, if you just mute yourself and we can say hello to you. Ah, there he is. So hello, Andrew.
Howard, hello, and hello to all of our visitors this evening. It's lovely to be with you. As Howard said, for my sins, I'm the headmaster of Kingswood School in Bath, and it's called Kingswood because it was originally, when founded by John Wesley in 1748, it was based in the Bristol suburb of Kingswood, and this has held on to that name now that it's moved over to Bath, or that was back in the 1850s. So anyway, that's a little bit of history, but lovely to be here, Howard.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being with us. And I understand that you're on vacation and on holiday, but you're still uh, uh, joining us, I think from Cornwall, is that right?
Yes, yeah. So because Kingswood is a school that has both day and boarding pupils, I
Yeah,
live at school during term time, so I try and escape and get some sea air when I can over the Easter holidays. So
yeah. Well, I'm not at all surprised. Well, thank you for joining us. We're going to come to you shortly, but first of all, a couple of things. I want to share with you this. This. Here we are. Transforming the nation, education. So why do we do this? Why is education, why is teaching significant and important to the Methodist people? Well, we ought to go back to the scriptures in the Proverbs on wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And that sense of the nature of God wanting us to know things. And then I love this from chapter 4. Get wisdom, get insight. Do not forget or turn away from the words of my mouth, says the author of Proverbs. But that sense of, okay, so we need to engage with education. We need to engage with this wisdom, and therefore to understand it. And going back to chapter 1, for learning about wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for gaining instruction in wise dealings. How do you do that? You do that through righteousness, living rightly under God. You do it through justice, and you do it through equity. And I think that they are profound verses for us from the Proverbs. Now, oh yeah, oh, I'm sorry, I just have I've got a couple of images here. Can you see them, Ali? Yeah, a couple of images that. How does it work? Well, there's a sense in which when we read the scriptures day by day, I hope you do, that actually a knowledge builds and grows out of that. And then here's another image. When we engage with wisdom, you know, the light comes on in all kinds of areas of our life to do with family and community and relationships and politics and the engagement with issues, the care of creation, the issues of justice, etc. So wisdom is a really important aspect in the scriptures and for us. So thank you for bearing with me about that. We're going to talk to Andrew shortly, but first of all, I want us to see a short piece from a video which is about Methodist schools. And it starts with Inderjit Bogle, who you will know was a former president of the conference. Inderjit speaking a little bit about education and then over to some teachers and issues there. So, Ali, over to you for that first introductory piece.
Faith is about learning in order that we might then be of some service to the world in which we live.
Once upon a time, there were 3 little wolves. I mean, they run inside the house and lock.
Education's been a passion of Methodists since the beginning of the Methodist Church, and it's a passion which we can find in the life of John Wesley, who everywhere that he went and set up a base, he set up a school as part of that. It's believed that the first ever Sunday school was set up by a Methodist woman who's called Hannah Ball, and she epitomises the desire of the early Methodists to bring people in to have access to learning.
I think the Methodist Church always has had a commitment to education and to being there in all sorts of different communities, using the places we are to really live out the faith.
John Wesley said like these words, do all the good you can, and like Methodist is something when you represent that.
The thing that we've learned about being Methodist is that it isn't just about your religion and faith in God, it's also about loving people.
Our schools are about giving children the very best educational opportunities, wherever they are, in whichever sector, and however old the children.
This school welcomes people of all faiths and none, and it really does. It's quite extraordinary, and it embraces them. It's not just being tolerant, it's actually saying, we like it. We like the fact that you're different.
And it's not just about the attainment, it's about the progress children make at their own level. And we have children who have quite severe special needs, and we love to have them as part of our school. That's part of us.
The potential and opportunity for children to learn to live together is one of the most fundamental things that we think is important, and I know is reflected in the values of the Methodist Church.
Thank you. Thank you. So I hope that gives you a kind of an idea of the breadth of Methodist schools around the country, and some of the reason why they feel it's so important to be there and to be involved in education. Earlier, I met Andrew Gordon Brown, and we had a conversation about education, which we're going to see now. I need to tell you that some of you may know that I've had an operation on my nose, and at the time we did this, I had an elastoplast across it. Forgive me for that, but here is the video. Thank you. Andrew, welcome to this Lent series and to our time together briefly in this conversation.
Thank you, Howard. Very, very nice to be with you today.
Well, thank you. And we see you in your study, looking very fine. How did you get into education?
Well, I'm going to give you a short answer to that because there's a long one as well. But I did it. I switched careers in my mid-30s, I guess. I did it a dozen years as a career in banking and finance, and then switched into teaching. in the kind of early 2000s. And I think I wanted ultimately to find a place of work where I could kind of give expression to my beliefs and my values, where I felt actually I could make a difference to the lives of others. And I didn't feel that my job in banking kind of put many ticks in boxes there. And I had a bit of a Damascene moment, I guess, one day where I realized I should become a teacher. And so I did. And I have to say that the kind of busy term times and the long school holidays also was a kind of a sort of attractive element of the kind of whole move, Howard.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's really interesting. And now you're the head at Kingswood School, one of our important Methodist independent schools, and there's a whole cadre of Methodist schools, day schools, and so forth.
Yes.
Well. What is it about a Methodist school that is distinctive? So that if I walk into a Methodist school, what would I expect to see?
I can answer that, I suppose, in two ways. I mean, just in terms of kind of structure, you would see things that you would recognize as Methodists. So we have a chapel, we have a chaplain. The timetable of the school day is kind of set up to give our pupils opportunities for weekly worship and school service. I guess you'd also see that, hardwired into the curriculum were issues around kind of equality and inclusion, a focus on social justice. So those things kind of structurally, you'd see, okay, I see that there's some interesting things going on there. For me as well, it's also about the feel of the school. Wesley's kind of great quote that I often draw on is that he said that an ounce of love is worth a pound of knowledge. And I think if that's true in a school, then the way that love is manifest is in just great relationships between people. So I think if you came to Kingswood, what you'd essentially see is a large number of very happy children kind of enjoying their life at school, and with very kind of constructive relationships with each other and obviously with the teachers who are here to serve them.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. Of course, there's a lot of day schools as well, aren't there? And associate schools around the country, as well as the independent schools. And would that be true across the board?
Yeah, I think so, actually. I mean, Kingswood's an associated member of the Methodist Independent Schools Trust. And there's about a dozen independent schools up and down the country, actually. And I would say that all of those schools have that in common. And I meet on a termly basis with the heads of the other independent schools, and I've been to visit most of them. And so I think I would say there's definitely a kind of common ethos and Methodist identity that you'd experience there. There's also about, I think at least 65 mainly Methodist primary schools, state primary schools dotted around the country as well. The closest one to us in Bath is the Selwood Academy in Frome, and we've got a lovely partnership with them. And actually, I've been to visit their school as well, and loved seeing pictures of John Wesley around the school, and some of his quotes adorning the school walls, etc., as a kind of sign of their own heritage.
What do you think? What would you say makes a good education? What makes a good education?
I think human beings are social animals, and we know ultimately that we are kind of designed to thrive in community. So I think, if you step back from the fact that, of course, we want our children to get great academic qualifications, which is the kind of ticket on towards university or a first choice next step, whatever that might be, university or college or straight into the job market. But equally, I think we need to give young people the skills and personal qualities that where they can go and make a difference in their community. And I think if an education doesn't do that, then we've failed our young people. I think it's about qualifications and personal qualities, and that ability essentially to kind of look beyond yourself and to say, well, how can I take the skills that I have, the talents that I've developed, and use them to serve other people?
Yeah. And I mean, clearly these are Methodist schools, but they come within the broader band of Christian schools, what you might sometimes call church schools. What about the Christian element in terms of the curriculum and in terms of the ethos of the school?
In one of the ways you see that Christian heritage at Kingswood kind of built into what we do in our curriculum is, I mean, I've mentioned obviously that every child gets to attend chapel every week, but actually in terms of our overall strategic plan, serving the community is one of our 4 kind of strategic pillars. So there's a strong focus at Kingswood on teaching young people to kind of look beyond themselves and say, you know, what am I doing to mentor other young children in Bath, or to raise money to support charities, to be aware of social justice. We've got and actually built into our prefect system at Kingswood, we have a social justice rep on our senior prefect group. We've got an EDI, 2 EDI reps actually on our senior prefect group. And one of the things they do is, as our student leaders, is give opportunities for young people to kind of get involved in those areas. And I think that's kind of the kind of Christian beliefs and values coming to life in the work that we do to serve the people of the local community.
Okay. What do you think was the we're in this series, we're talking about transforming the nation, which you will understand is not a small title. How can Methodist schools, Christian schools, but particularly Methodist schools, how can they participate in transforming the nation?
It's a very big question, Howard. I mean, I'd say, Wesley, I'll go back to his quote about an ounce of love being worth a pound of knowledge. So he said to his teachers, look, don't get swallowed up in books. Having said that, he was very insistent on a kind of rigorous approach to education, that the intellectual development of young people should be sound. But equally recognizing that without love, I guess he was drawing on the kind of gospel message there, that without love, it all amounts to nothing. And I think it's really important that we kind of focus on that, and we speak kind of proudly about that as being the kind of central value that kind of underpins all education. But particularly in Methodist schools, I think it's our job to kind of make that claim. I think in terms of preparing young people for the life that they're going to inherit, as I said earlier, they need a whole lot more than just good qualifications. They need to be really good communicators as young people, when they enter university and the workplace. They need to be able to kind of collaborate with other people. They also need to think critically, actually. I mean, there's so much, there's a danger of kind of misinformation in the world around us and kind of polarization, that I think our young people need to be able to discern kind of truth from fiction. So I think that's important. And I think there are plenty of big problems that need to be solved in the world today. And we need young people who are going to be kind of creative problem solvers as well. So, I often think about those in terms of the kind of 4 C's of kind of the life skills we want our young people to have around communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity.
Yes, thank you. That's really helpful. I mean, one of the debates that's been circulating this winter is about the use of mobile phones and the media in school. I mean, do Methodist schools allow pupils to have mobile phones?
I mean, I can only speak on behalf of Kingswood here. We do allow our pupils to have mobile phones, but we've introduced quite a strict policy, where every child in years 7 to 11, they have what's called a yonder pouch, and they have to put their phone in a pouch when they arrive at school each day. Okay. And the pouch gets locked, and it can only be unlocked at the end of the day at various unlocking stations. So we're teaching our children in the school that they are quite happy to go for 8 hours of the school day without access to their mobile phone. And that has a really positive impact, I think, on the climate of school. It gets children to talk to each other rather than to kind of huddle around a mobile phone. They're certainly not allowed mobile phones in the prep school, so kind of year 6 and below. And that yonder pouch mobile phone policy has been quite popular, certainly amongst teachers and parents. And I think recent feedback from our pupils actually is that they're okay with it as well. You know, I think they recognize that the ability to have sensible conversations with young people and to build relationships actually is pretty good for them too.
And that's really interesting. Maybe we should ask the groups tonight whether they can cope with 8 hours without their mobile phone. So if you were the Secretary of Education, what policies would you apply? I'm talking about across the board. I understand that independent, as the head of an independent school, you'd want to change the rules on VAT, but what would you, as the Secretary of Education, introduce for schools across the country?
That's a good question. I would definitely abolish VAT, Howard, as you say. But I also think I would be trying hard to break down any kind of ideological divide between independent schools and state schools. You know, in the end, we're just serving children, and I think there's a lot that we need to and should be learning from each other. And I know that the independent sector has said, well, look, we'd like to make more places available for children at our schools. And if I were the Secretary of Education, I would be looking to take a kind of pragmatic and common sense approach to making sure that the schools learn from each other. On a sort of bigger picture note, I would say, our politicians at the moment are obsessed with growth. Everything's about policies to fire up economic growth. And I think that is obviously important. But I think education is about more than just about the kind of utilitarian argument about preparing people to be good workers in the economy. And I think we need to education and schools need to be producing kind of enlightened, reflective people who are going to go and make a difference in the world, and who've learned from all the best that's been written and thought and said in history. And we certainly draw enormously on our heritage as John Wesley School and the kind of very enlightened vision that he had for Kingswood and his kind of manifesto for education when he established it.
Andrew, thank you very much indeed.
It's been a pleasure, Howard. Thank you.
So you can see we had a quite interesting, wide-ranging conversation earlier, and we're going to put you into groups to discuss some of those things. So I hope that if the things have prompted you, you've been jotting them down or just making a mental note of them. I'm going to show you just one more little video before we go into groups, because I want to show you, it's a couple of minutes, that shows the scope of Methodist schools in the UK. And Ali is going to show that to us now.
We have about 25,000 children come through our doors every day. But then you can add to that 5,000 adults, the parents and grannies and all those people who come into school assemblies. I don't think it's stretching a point to say that our schools have a reach of probably about 100,000 people.
We go out into the community and do different events, from fundraising events, bringing other children in to do sporting events here. So we certainly reach out into the community. But we go beyond that. We've got outreach programs going to Tanzania. So I think our message travels further than just our local community.
The values and things that we share are learnt by the staff and the pupils and expressed in a wider way to all of the family members.
We've got a bunch of school values. We've got gentleness, kindness, thankfulness, patience, love. There's way too many for me to even say them all.
The rules are basically telling you to just do all the good you can. So what we try and do is we try and take the rules and use them in our everyday life. You can't just go around just doing whatever you want. You can't just say, oh, I'm too bad at this, I'm not going to do it. It's not persevering. So you need them to have a good life, really. That's what I'd say.
One of my children, Sophie, she did something to her sister, and she actually said to her, Sophie, Gabby said to Sophie, I forgive you. And she gave her a cuddle, actually. I said, gave her a kiss. I said she forgives her for what she did. And it was so amazing that it was what she learned from school that was transiting back into the house. It was just continuation of it. I am just, God have mercy.
I think that's such a lovely little piece, because you hear from the voice of the children. You also hear from that parent that what's happening in the school is having a profound effect in the family life, and that's, you know, what it's also about. Well, friends, right, you've had enough from us, so how about sharing together? And don't forget to take a note of questions and issues that you're raising, because we're going to have a conversation with Andrew in a short while, and put your questions into chat if you can. I might even ask for people just to indicate, and we'll get your questions live. But it's better and more helpful to us if you can put them into chat, and then we can see what they are and use them in some kind of order. So thank you ever so much. And Ali is now going to put us into smaller groups to reflect on what we've already seen. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've had some really interesting discussions, and I'm intrigued to find out what your questions might be. So if you can, put them into chat. You see the chat at the bottom there? You just click on that, and then you can type questions into that. I'm thinking that there's probably quite a few people who are teachers or ex-teachers, and you probably got some really interesting questions. I mean, well, I suppose I've been a lecturer in a college, but I've not been a teacher in what you might call a proper school, though I was for many years a pupil in one. But so where are questions coming? We've not got any in chat at the moment. So if you've got a question, just indicate your hand. We'll try and catch you. Yeah. Oh, here they come. Here they come. So, Andrew, I'm going to ask their questions, and you, I'm sure you've got good answers. But we wondered what the social justice rep's role is in the life of a school.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mentioned in my interview that we had senior prefects who had been appointed to those roles. That's a new initiative, actually, that we put in place that from September this year. And our chaplain, Rev Katie, and one of our teachers are the two teachers who effectively support the social justice group. And they tend to be a group largely of students in the sixth form, in years 12 and 13, so they are our kind of student leaders, if you like. And they will organize a whole range of things over the course of a term, which kind of engage kids in the local community. So it could be, for example, that they will organize one of the tutor groups in the school to host a tea party for the elderly people from a local old age home, and they'll invite them to Kingswood. We'll send a minibus to collect them, and then the kids will do all the baking, make the tea, sit and chat. There's quite a lot of, another example would be quite a lot of focus on kids at school in their tutor groups and in their houses, taking responsibility to nominate local charities that they might wish to raise funds for on a termly basis. So they do quite a bit of that as well. One of the other elements that's been going on at Kingswood, perhaps as a third example for quite some time, is our sixth form students within that social justice umbrella get trained up as student mentors, and they then go out into the local community to mentor children, typically children in primary schools, years 5 and 6, who are busy preparing to make that transition to senior school, and they build kind of constructive relationships with them. So the social justice banner at Kingswood it's quite a big one. And we wanted to make sure that we had someone on the senior prefect body whose job it was to have that as their kind of portfolio, if you like.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions talks about the kind of socioeconomic breadth of students in the Methodist independent schools, and whether there are any children with special educational needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think at Kingswood, at the senior school, there's about 900 pupils from, aged 11 to 18. And I'd say 200 of them, maybe just shy of that, would be on our learning support register. Now, that's a whole range of a kind of spectrum of someone who might have mild disability to someone who might be kind of on the kind of ASD spectrum, and kind of everything in between. So, and we have a dedicated team of 4 full-time teachers in the learning support department who will make sure that each of those children on the register has a plan. And for some of the with more precise needs, they'll be coming out of one or other of their lessons to have additional one-to-one learning support. So although, I mean, on one level, Kingswood is a kind of selective school in the sense that you have to pass an exam to get in. It's not massively selective from that sense. It's a really broad church, including lots of children who have special educational needs.
Are you aware of, apart from the independent schools, are you aware of Methodist state schools that are senior schools, or are they all primary schools?
As far as I know, Howard, almost exclusively the Methodist state schools are primary schools.
Yeah.
The school that we have a partnership with, this Selwood Academy, interestingly, which is in Frome in Somerset.
Transform the nation.
They the Selwood Academy is what's known as a middle school, which goes from years 5 to year 8. So that's quite unusual. But most of these state school, the Methodist schools, that are state schools,
okay,
are primary schools.
And in the conversation that we were having as a group, you were sharing that quite a number of the Methodist schools have become academies. In the sort of modern form of them, and that might be beneficial to them.
Yeah, look, I think there are definite advantages to schools operating as networks and to kind of sharing good practice, you know, with each other. Schools that belong to the same group, you know, they have kind of, you know, I can only really talk for the independent sector, but for the schools that are part, for example, of the Methodist Independent Schools Trust, they benefit from being part of a kind of bigger, larger, more financially secure trust to kind of oversee their operations. And from my experience as a head is that some of the best professional development that I have is when I go and visit other schools and kind of see how they do things.
Okay, so there's a cluster of questions that are around the idea that Methodist schools are nice schools, right? Okay, or that they're safe spaces based on excellent values, and how do they prepare pupils for what is, in one question, called the real world of higher education, of work, and life?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and while everyone was in their breakout room, we were having quite a good conversation about that.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you know, I think that well, the kind of the term that I often use is, I use a phrase that academic excellence is an important part of human excellence, but it's only one part, and so schools have to make sure that they have kind of inspirational teachers who are subject specialists and who have the kind of pedagogical skills to really teach young people to learn, so that they end up with good qualifications, because those qualifications ultimately are the kind of entry ticket, if you like, to their next steps. But my personal view is that that schools should be providing a broad range of opportunities for children to find their talents outside the classroom. I think children learn as much outside the classroom as they do from within it, and I also think they learn as much from their peers as they do from their teachers. So you have to give them opportunities to outside of the classroom, to play sport, to act in plays, to play musical instruments, to enjoy the great outdoors. I think that's where kind of character is built, and I think one of the things that we're lucky, and I see there's some questions in the chat as well. We are lucky as an independent school in that we've got kind of bigger budgets to work with than an average state school, and that's obviously because the parents who send their children to Kingswood, although we have lots of children on bursaries, but the parents are required to pay fees. But that one of the things we absolutely pride ourselves on is on making sure that the young people at Kingswood are able to find and develop their talents, because I think young people who can do that then becomes a great source of sense of self-worth, sense of self-esteem, if they have things that they're passionate about in addition to their learning.
Okay, thank you. That's very clear. One of the things that, in fact, we talked about this just briefly in our discussion, was about discipleship. One of the questions that's in the chat says that Sunday school played an important role in her education, and so here are Christian schools, Methodist schools. Where is discipleship? Now, I'm slightly wary about asking the question, because I'm aware that our Methodist schools are not a missionary enterprise, right?
Yeah.
However, they are Christian schools, and how do we share that? I just wonder what your thoughts about that were.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. That, I mean, I think if I consider the reason that parents choose to send their children to a school like Kingswood, and I think it's probably fair to say to other Methodist schools, is because they recognize that they're schools that have a strong focus on pastoral care. So schools that see their first priority as to make sure that the kind of children are loved and cared for at school. But not because they're Methodist schools. And because I think we have got at Kingswood School, and we're the kind of mothership, if you like, of Methodist education, in the sense we were the original Methodist school founded by Wesley. There are very few families who would profess to be practicing Methodists at Kingswood. Probably, and I don't know the data, but I would say a small percentage of the families at Kingswood School would be kind of regular churchgoers. So the fact that every child at Kingswood gets to go to chapel every single week, has another opportunity each week for a whole school service, where they learn about the kind of Christian message. They're kind of challenged, I suppose, to a kind of personally developed life philosophy. I mean, it's not our job to compel them to believe anything, but we do make sure that those Christian values are taught both in kind of theory and in practice. So I think, as I said in the video, if we get children to look beyond themselves and say it's not all about me, it's about how can I be useful to others, then the spirit is at work, if you like.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. But one of the people in chat, Pat, says that the ethos of church schools appears to allow children to flourish more than in state schools. Now, that's interesting. One would hope it to be the case.
Yes, I've I grew up in South Africa, and I'm the product of a state school myself, and but since I came to the UK all those years ago and got a job as a teacher, I've actually only ever worked in independent schools, and only in schools that have had quite strong Christian foundations. I've worked in 2 Methodist schools, a Church of England school, and a Catholic school. And I'm absolutely sure that the way that those schools chose to kind of live out their kind of Christian mission had a very positive impact on the pupils, whether they were of faith or not. And so I do agree with that. I think Christian schools are sought after, and places of schools are sought after because of that fact that actually they're schools where the kind of values that are imparted and where they hope the children to kind of catch those values are part of the school culture.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered the major questions that are in the chat. I just want to check, particularly from some of you who either are or have been teachers, whether you've asked your questions.
There's a question about from Susan about building relationships with disadvantaged communities. And I mean, I think that is very important. So, for example, there's a wonderful charity in Bath called the Life Project, which is a haven for people with quite severe disabilities, and it provides them with opportunities to kind of work allotments and do some gardening. And our children, we've got a really good relationship with the Life Project, so groups of our children will regularly go down to the Life Project and work with those disabled people. So that's a kind of small example of what our children do. I mean, it's quite interesting. The people on the call might not realize, but there's close to 1,000 Methodist Methodist schools, colleges, and universities around the world. So we, for example, we've got a good partnership with a school in Mexico, So there were, and I didn't realize this until our own big anniversary year at Kingswood a couple of years ago, but just how global the impact of Wesleyan education is. And there are lots of Wesleyan Methodist schools in Africa who have a, you would say very kind of disadvantage in terms of access to resources. So in fact, in the summer of 2026, we're taking a group of our children from Kingswood out on a kind of learning exercise, if you like, to visit some schools in Zambia to see how they do things. But that's as much about our children learning as it is about them being able to do anything.
Yes, well, of course, the Central Hall congregation is multinational, and quite a number are from the African continent, where in Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, etc., as well as Zambia and Zimbabwe, there are, and South Africa, there are many Methodist schools, and some of our congregation have benefited from that over the years. So from time to time, there are celebrations of these schools.
I was going to say something I should have said in answer to my previous question is it is fair to say that the school fees that we charge are beyond most families. That's the reality of it. We've got quite a well-established bursary program, which is where really our vision is to try and make it possible for as many children as we can who have no possibility of affording the fees to come to the school, and in particular, so we're an accredited school with an organization called the Royal National Children's Springboard Foundation, and they will seek out children who are in care or on the edge of care, or children from disadvantaged backgrounds who they think would benefit from a place in a UK boarding school. And we will then, look, we can only do it in small number, but we will offer fully funded places to a small number of children each year to say, look, come to Kingswood. So that's one of the small ways, I suppose, that we kind of reach out to those who are kind of less fortunate. And we've got a big element of the school's fundraising strategy is to try and raise money for what we call transformational bursaries, which is to provide opportunities to families who can't afford the fees.
Well, that's great to hear in a series about transforming the nation. Andrew, thank you for answering our questions with such clarity and such a range of questions. Thank you, everyone, for posting your questions. That's been really helpful. So, I guess the question is, well, what about the future of Methodist schools? I want to draw your attention to a piece of research that had been published by the Bible Society yesterday. It's called a Quiet Revival. That's the right title, isn't it, Ali? Yeah, a Quiet Revival, and it speaks about the number of people, the increase in number of people who are coming to church, but also about over half the population have had no contact with Christianity, and of them, a large proportion are keen to learn about the Christian faith and interested to be invited to church. Now, this, I think, cuts across many of the assumptions that people have in church, that to invite their friends or people is a scary thing to do, but I encourage you to do it. So what about Methodist schools in this kind of environment that is clearly changing? And we're going to see a couple of minutes from the video that we've looked at in the past. Thank you, Ali.
I think if children start off life with a really nurturing, warm, moral centre, they can absolutely have a really sure foundation on which to build any learning, on which to consider opinions about worldviews, and to which they can return if they struggle in later life.
Both groups of schools have throughout their history, and even in recent history, been constituted separately. But the opportunity at this point in our story has come for us to be able to bring both groups of schools together and operate just under the one name of Methodist schools.
We all deliver education, so why can't we be the same thing? And we may come at it at different angles, but ultimately we are all schools delivering education to children.
We use some of the facilities of those independent schools, and they use some of our expertise with regards to teaching maths, for instance.
Make us sing together, speaking the language of love. Oh, together as one, we can make it better, together as one.
In our churches at the moment, we perhaps don't have quite as many children as we used to, but this is a place in which I can come and be with children and with young people. And so I think it does add something, because it brings the church to them, and it brings them a good news. It gives them a faith perspective, whether they'd like to take that one up or not. We make the offer of church and what it means.
We're on the front line here, and this is really about the church being absolutely in the lives of the children and young people, and through them to the families with whom they live.
It's absolutely critical to be involved in education for learning, but also as a way of promoting and developing young leaders.
200 years of experience of teaching, of running schools, and we don't want that to be lost as we move into probably the biggest change in education in that 200 years.
That long history of involvement with education hopefully gives us a place at the table.
So I think that the challenge for us is to think about what in 10, 20, 30 years' time, whether there will be the opportunities for children to have the sanctuary and the nourishment that comes from being in a Methodist school. If we believe in that for our children, then we have to do what the early Methodists said. We have to do what we can and find new ways of being true to ourselves, however the educational world changes around us.
Do not read unless you want everyone to know you're a toad.
You don't really see anyone coming into school with a frown on the face. You don't see people leaving school with a frown on the face. Yeah, this is a happy school.
Always try your best and never give up.
Kind of changed our lives.
I just love that little boy. It kind of changed our lives, you know. How old is he? 6, 7, 8? It's wonderful, really. Well, thank you to Andrew and to the pupils and staff who were part of that video as well. I'm going to lead you in a prayer, which I will show you, and here it is. Now, why? I'm going to stop sharing because I can't get my PowerPoint to. I'm going to start again, and I'm going to, here we go. If I go to the right thing, I get it. Here we go. So, a prayer. Oh Lord, as your disciples, may we be true learners, eagerly seeking truth, understanding what is right, pursuing justice and equity, that we may live wisely as Jesus people in our communities. Thank you for the challenge of this series, that we could be, we should be, those who are part of the community of faith that seeks to transform our nation, especially the church, and to seek scriptural holiness throughout the land. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. thank you for being part of tonight, and thank you for being part of the series where you have. We're going to finish with a song, which is really appropriate, I think. You may have seen it before, I make no apology for that, but it is one that starts, "We seek your kingdom," and indeed we do. Ali.
Seek your kingdom throughout every sphere.
We long for heaven's demonstration here. Jesus, your light shine bright for all to see. Transform, revive, and heal society.
For all things, in him all things were made. Inspiring culture, media, and trade. May all our work serve your economy. Transform, revive, and heal society. Peace, truth, and justice reigning everywhere. With us be present in our public square. Fill all who lead with your integrity. Transform, revive, and heal society. Forgive us, Lord, when we have not engaged, failing to scribe your heart on history's page. Make us again what we were made to be. Transform, revive, and heal society.
Well, that's a powerful song to finish our series, in which we have looked in a number of ways, and the aspects in which we can together transform society. I guess it begins with us. And as we enter this coming week, we journey with Jesus to Palm Sunday as he enters the city. You know, and when Jesus comes to our city, he comes with words of challenge, but also words of welcome, of forgiveness, of new opportunities. And as we go through Holy Week, as we gather around the table on Maundy Thursday, as we sit beside the cross on Good Friday, as we go through Holy Saturday, that sense of absence and difficulty and loss, only to find that on Easter Day, Jesus rises again, in us, for us, with us. So may God bless you in this season of Holy Week and Easter. May God be with you, with your family, with all those whom you love, and of course with the community of faith at the Central Hall. So thank you for being part of us, and thank you to Andrew especially for being with us this evening. To Ali, who has guided us through these evenings especially well, and to me, or rather from me, from my cellar. Good night,
Howard,
and God bless you.
Can I just say, on behalf of everyone, to Howard and also to Ali, thank you so much for just an amazing, thought-provoking and encouraging and educational time that we've had. So well done, and thank you very much. I think we've all very much enjoyed it.
Thank
Oh.
you.
This is
Thank you
Francis
so much,
Miles
Francis.
speaking.
Yes, I'm trying to find you to spotlight you, but you've hidden.
We doff our cap.
Yeah.
But,